Tonight, I need you to do something for me. I need you to look around whatever room you are sitting in right now. Check the corners, check the doorway, check the window behind you. Because every single person in the 5 stories you are about to hear did exactly what you were doing right now. They thought they were safe, they thought they were alone, and they were wrong. What makes these stories different from everything else you will find on this platform is that they are not fiction. They were not written by a screenwriter or polished by an editor. They were submitted to us by real people. People who are still trying to make sense of what happened to them. People who wake up some nights and cannot separate the memory from the present moment. People who have never spoken about these experiences publicly because they just knew that no one would believe them. Tonight, 5 of those stories are yours. The first comes from a woman who answered a knock at her door at 2 a.m. and discovered that the person standing on her porch was someone who could not possibly have been there. The second comes from a gas station attendant who worked a 12-hour overnight shift that ended with him calling the police, resigning on the spot, and never returning to that building again. The third comes from a college student who began to notice that her apartment was being rearranged, subtly, precisely, in ways that made it impossible to claim she was imagining it. The fourth comes from 2 friends on a road trip who realized, the car that had been behind them for 4 hours was not following them randomly. And the fifth, the one that has stayed with our team the longest, comes from a man who went for an early morning run and came home convinced that something in the park had been trying to lead him somewhere he was not meant to come back from. This is True Terror Files Official. New horror every week, submitted by real people. For those brave enough to listen, subscribe now and make sure notifications are on. You do not want to miss what comes next. And now, lights down, volume up. Let us begin. Angela had lived alone in her apartment on the 3rd floor for 2 years and had always considered herself the kind of person who was not afraid of ordinary things. She worked night shifts at a hospital. She drove home in the dark. She kept her curtains open because she liked the city lights and did not care about being seen from the street below. So when she heard knocking at her front door at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday night in March, her first reaction was not fear but irritation. A neighbor locked out, a delivery driver with the wrong unit, something mundane and fixable. She went to the door, looked through the peephole, and saw her sister. Not a person who looked like her sister. Her sister. Same coat Angela had watched her by last winter, same dark hair, same way of standing with her weight slightly shifted to the left, chin down, hands in her pockets. Her sister, who Angela knew with absolute certainty, was in Portland, Oregon, 1,200 miles away, where she had been living for 3 years, and where Angela had spoken to her by phone just 6 hours earlier. Angela stood at that peephole for a long moment, not moving, not speaking, and then the figure on the other side of the door said her name, said it quietly, almost softly, in a voice that was correct in every technical detail, and wrong in a way that Angela could feel in her chest before she could articulate it. She stepped back from the door without speaking. She picked up her phone and called her sister in Portland. Her sister answered on the second ring, groggy and confused, clearly in bed, clearly 3 time zones away, clearly not standing in a hallway 1,200 miles from where she was supposed to be. Angela kept her on the phone. The knocking continued for 6 more minutes. Patient, steady, not urgent, not angry, just present. And then it stopped. When Angela finally opened the door, the hallway was empty. The building's entrance requires a key fob to access, which eliminates the possibility of a random stranger gaining entry. There's no camera in Angela's hallway. When she described the encounter to building management the following morning, They pulled the lobby camera footage from that night. The footage shows Angela's front lobby door opening at 2:14 a.m. from the inside. No one entered the building from outside between midnight and 6 a.m. Whatever knocked on Angela's door that night was already inside the building when it decided to stand at her door and use her sister's voice to ask her to open it. Marcus worked the overnight shift at a 24-hour gas station. It's off a rural highway in Central Georgia, the kind of station that sees maybe 6 customers between midnight and 6 in the morning, where the hours pass in near total silence, broken only by the hum of refrigerator units and the occasional pair of headlights sweeping across the lot. He had worked that shift for 4 months without incident, and in that time he had developed a particular relationship with the particular quality of quiet that settles over a place like that at 3 a.m., a quiet he was comfortable with, a quiet he understood. What happened on the night of October 9th broke that comfort permanently. At 3:22 a.m., a man entered the station, was in his mid-40s, ordinary looking, wearing a gray jacket and carrying no bags. He walked directly to the back of the store, stood in front of the beverage cooler for approximately 90 seconds without opening it, and then walked back to the front counter and placed a single dollar bill on the glass. He did not ask for anything. He did not speak. He looked at Marcus with an expression that Marcus would later describe as less like a look and more like an assessment, the way a person looks at a problem they are calculating the solution to. Marcus asked if he needed anything. The man said quietly and without breaking eye contact, "You should call someone to come be with you before 4. Then he walked out, got into a car Marcus had not noticed, pull-in engine running, no lights on, parked beyond the camera's range, and drove away. Marcus stood behind the counter for a moment, processing what had just happened, and then made the decision that most people in his position would make. He told himself it was nothing, a strange person, a nothing moment. At 3:58 a.m., a man in dark clothing appeared at the side of the building, not from the parking lot, not from the road, but from the tree line behind the dumpsters, walking slowly and deliberately toward the station's side entrance, which Marcus had unlocked 40 minutes earlier to take out trash and had not yet resecured. Marcus saw him on the monitor. He hit the door lock remotely, called 911, and crouched behind the counter. Officers arrived at 4:09. They found signs of a prolonged attempt to force the side door. Tool marks disturbed gravel, a dropped cloth glove on the ground outside. They also found in the tree line evidence that someone had been standing there for a significant period of time, flattened grass, cigarette butts, a clear sight line directly into the station's lit interior. Someone had been watching Marcus for hours before that man came in and told him to make a call. Marcus does not know who the man in the gray jacket was. It was not captured on any footage. His car left no plates in range of any camera. Marcus quit that morning when his replacement arrived, and he has not worked a night shift since. Priya was a second-year college student living alone in a studio apartment near campus when things began to move. It's not dramatically, not in the way horror movies stage it. It's not with furniture overturned or objects hurled across rooms. Subtly in the way that makes you question your own memory before you question your reality, which Priya would later realize was exactly the point. It started with her coffee mug. She always placed it on the right side of the dish rack, handle facing the wall, and one morning it was on the left side, handle facing outward. She assumed she had placed it there herself without thinking. 3 days later, the book she had been reading face down on her nightstand exactly where she always left it was closed and placed spine up in a slightly different position. A week after that, the chair at her desk, which she always pushed fully in when she stood up, was pulled out at an angle when she returned from a morning class. Each displacement was small. Each could be explained by distraction or absent-mindedness. But they were consistent, and they had a quality she struggled to describe until she finally settled on the word intentional. They were not random misplacements. They were deliberate alterations, each one just noticeable enough to register, none dramatic enough to be undeniable. She began taking photographs. Every morning before she left, she documented the position of 12 objects in her apartment. Every evening when she returned, she compared. Over 14 days, she recorded 9 instances of displacement. Her apartment building was modern, her door lock electronic and keycard only, her windows on the 3rd floor above any accessible surface. The building had no record of entry to her unit during her absences. Her building manager, initially dismissive, reviewed the access log after Priya brought her photos to the leasing office and found one anomaly. On 4 separate occasions, her unit's keycard reader had logged a successful entry at times when Priya's own keycard was confirmed to be somewhere else on campus, her location verified by dining hall and library card swipes. The building's system requires a physical keycard to open the lock. There is no override that does not register, no way to access the unit that would not appear in the log. A physical key was made for Priya's unit. Someone had it. That person has never been identified. The key has never been found, and the building could not explain how a duplicate came to exist. Priya moved out within the week. She has never returned to pick up the items she left behind. Jake and Connor had been on the road for 9 hours when Jake first noticed the headlights. They were driving a long interstate stretch through rural New Mexico, the kind of road that goes straight for 40 miles at a time, where you can see other vehicles as fixed points of light far ahead and behind, and where the absence of traffic is the default condition rather than the exception. The headlights had been there since a small town they had passed through, around the 7-hour mark. White, slightly asymmetrical in the way older vehicles sometimes are, holding a consistent distance of approximately a quarter mile behind them, regardless of Jake's speed. He mentioned it to Connor casually, not alarmed yet. Connor watched the mirrors for a few minutes and agreed the headlights seemed to maintain their position, even when Jake accelerated to pass a slow-moving truck. They told themselves it was another driver keeping pace on a long, empty road. Logical, ordinary. It was when Jake took an unplanned exit. No fuel needed, no bathroom break required. Just a quick, impulsive turn onto a ramp he chose without signaling, and the headlights followed that the conversation changed. The exit led to a single-pump gas station and a closed diner. Jake pulled in and cut his lights. The car that had been following them slowed as it passed the exit ramp, slowed visibly. Not the deceleration of someone making an incidental decision, but the specific reduced speed of something uncertain about whether to follow, and then continued on the highway. Jake and Connor sat in the dark for 15 minutes. When they pulled back onto the highway, the headlights were not visible ahead or behind. They drove for 20 minutes in silence. At mile marker 214, Connor, who had been watching the rearview mirror, said the word Jake in a voice that made Jake look up immediately. It. The headlights were back. Same distance, same asymmetry. They had been waiting. Jake called 911, reported the vehicle, and was advised to drive to the nearest highway patrol station without stopping. The vehicle followed them for 11 more miles and then disappeared as they approached town lights and traffic. Highway patrol found no matching vehicle in the area. Jake reviewed his dashcam footage at the patrol station and found that it had been recording the entire time, but the segment covering the first appearance of the headlights, the exit ramp, and the stretch leading to mile marker 214 had been corrupted. Not deleted, not overwritten, corrupted. In a way that the officer reviewing it said he had never seen before in dashcam footage. The file was there. Its contents were unreadable. They do not know what was in that car. They do not know how it found them again after the exit. They drove the remaining 4 hours to their destination with every light in the car on and did not stop for anything. David ran the same 5-mile loop through Harwick Park every morning before work, had been running it for 3 years, knew every bend and gradient and landmark, ended in the dark during winter months when sunrise came late and a headlamp was necessary. He knew that trail the way you know the hallways of a house you have lived in for years, not by sight, but by instinct, by the accumulated weight of familiarity. Which is why on the morning of February 6th, he knew immediately that something was different. It was subtle at first, a sense of wrongness in the geometry of the path, a feeling that the trail was curving in a direction it should not be curving. He told himself he was tired. He kept running. A quarter-mile in, he passed a tree he did not recognize, a split-trunk birch that he was certain he had never seen on this trail in 3 years of running it, and felt the first real thread of unease move through him. He slowed to a walk. His headlamp illuminated the trail ahead, which continued correctly for another 20 meters, and then bent in a direction that David, who could have drawn that trail from memory, was completely certain was not there. He stopped. He turned around. The trail behind him looked correct. He turned back forward. The trail ahead did not. Then from somewhere off the path to his left, he heard a sound that he has described in multiple retellings with exactly the same words, like something very large trying to breathe quietly. He ran, not forward back, the direction he had come from, following the trail as he knew it, not as it appeared to be presenting itself, and he ran without stopping, and without looking left or right for the full 1.5 miles back to the park entrance. When he reached the parking lot, he stopped and turned around and stood in the early gray morning looking at the trail mouth, breathing hard, watching. Nothing followed him out. He has run that loop hundreds of times since February 6th. The split-trunk birch does not exist on that trail. The bend that should not have been there does not exist on that trail. His running app, which GPS tracks every session, recorded his route that morning perfectly normally. The correct loop, the correct distance, the correct path. According to the data, he never deviated. According to David, he was somewhere else entirely for approximately 8 minutes, on a trail that should not exist, near something that did not want him to find his way back. He still runs every morning. He does not use a headlamp anymore. He says he prefers to see what is around him clearly, even in the dark. He says he has not heard that sound again. He says he checks every single time to make sure. 5 stories. 5 ordinary people who walked into ordinary moments. A Tuesday night, a work shift, a college apartment, a road trip, a morning run, and came out the other side permanently changed by something they cannot explain and cannot forget. Angela still checks the hallway before she opens her door. Marcus still sleeps with the lights on. Priya never lived alone again. Jake and Connor took a flight home. David runs every morning, checks every shadow, and listens. Always listens for that sound. Some experiences do not leave marks you can see. They leave marks you carry. If you have a story like these, something quiet and specific and real that happened to you in a moment you thought was safe, send it to us. The address is in the description below. We read everything. Subscribe to True Terror Files Official so you are the first to hear what comes next. Like this video if it reached you somewhere it was not supposed to. And tonight, before you close your eyes, check the corners, check the doorway. And whatever you hear on the other side of your door, think very carefully before you open it.